All right, hello there and welcome to another After Effects tutorial. And in this one, we're going to be talking about how you can use the puppet tool. So here I have this image in here. It's of a plumber. And I first want to look at this image. So if I double click on this image here, notice that it comes up in the footage panel. And notice that it has a transparent background. Now this is very important when you use the puppet tool. And to really explain this, we're going to go down here and then we're going to look at the alpha channel. This is what the puppet tool is actually going to use, this white channel here. This is basically saying that there is color in these areas, and this is what the puppet tool is actually going to manipulate. All right guys, so now we're actually going to look at the puppet tool. So we're going to go up here and it's right here. And if I press and hold it down, notice that this pops up and we have a puppet tool for position. We have a Starch Pen tool. We have a bend pen tool, advanced pen tool, and then an overlap tool. We're going to go through all these, but we're first going to start off with the position tool. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to put a pen right about here. Notice that a mesh has appeared and it shows up here, and we have expansion and then density and then record options. And for density, for now, I'm going to put it up at 12, and for expansion, I'll put it down at 30. Like this, and we're going to cover this soon, so don't worry. And for now, we're going to turn off the mesh. Notice that I put a pen here and it's now working as like an anchor. Notice what happens if I put another pen right around his elbow here and I try to move this second pen. Notice that the first pen is working as like an anchor, holding the hand in place. And notice now if I try to move the first pen, what happens? The second one is now working as the anchor. So that's how pens work. They basically work as anchors or places to hold your image in place. Now for this guy, I'll put a few more here, like one at his shoulder here, and then I'll put another one on his other shoulder, on his chest, and we can put one on his face right here. Now notice what happens when I try to move his hand. Notice the hand is now moving a little bit more independently, separate from the body. And this is all working off of like a distortion off of your alpha channel mesh. So if I show this real quick, this is what we're actually doing to the mesh. We are distorting it. Now, if we look down here, we will see that the puppet tool is actually an effect that comes into place once you put your first pen down. And if we look at the mesh here, drop down, we have our options like density, expansion, and then we have deform. And under deform, you will notice that keyframes have been created. And if we open this up by selecting them all and pressing U, we can see our keyframes and we can move them around. And wherever you put a new pen, a new puppet pen will appear, and at that spot in the timeline, you will have a new keyframe. So I will undo that. Good. Now, one other thing I really want to mention is that you can also change the type of your pens. All you have to do is simply, you can close this down, open it back up, and then notice that you're able to change it from here. So position, starch, pen, advanced, and it will change. So now I really want to cover the bend tool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to start all over. So I'm going to go up here, and then I'm going to select the bend tool right here. And then notice it looks the same, but don't worry, it's going to be different. And then right at his head, around his nose, I'm going to put a pen here. And notice that you are now able to change two things, the scale and the rotation. So if we click here at the top, and then if we try to scale it up, notice that you are scaling it up. And we can also rotate the image from here as well, from this pen here. Now this is really interesting when you start to add more bend pens here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another one. Then I'm going to click on this first one again. And now I'm going to expand his head. Notice that now his head is expanding. Now I'm shrinking him, expanding. And you can also rotate his head as well, like this. So that's how it works. Very interesting. Notice too how this pen here is actually holding his body in place as well. Look what would happen if I would actually put a position pen here. If I were to start all over, like this, delete these, and then put a bend pen at his face, And then for the second one, if I were to put a position tool on his chest, Notice what would happen once I try to rotate. Notice that his whole body is rotating along with him now. So that's a difference there. So the position pen works differently than other pens. I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to add another bend pen. And now we can rotate him, just his head right here. So that's a little bit about how the bend pen tool works. All right, guys, so now we're going to look at the advanced pen. So we're going to go up here, and then we're going to select advanced pen. Good. Now I'm going to click on his head again, one more time, and then I'll put another pen right here. So let's see how this pen works. So with this pen here, you can scale it up, you can rotate it, and you can actually move his position. So the advanced pen is like a position pen and a bend pen combined. Now let's see how this pen actually holds his head in place. So if I scale him up, okay, like this, okay. If I rotate it like this, notice that this advanced pen is actually pretty strong and it's holding him pretty well in place. It's working pretty well. So the advanced pen is very strong. And if we wanted to change this to say like a bend pen, so we could actually expand him now like this a little bit. Okay, we could rotate it. Okay, not as strong as the advanced pen as an anchor, but it's holding him a little bit, and we can move the position and the body moves with him with this pen. Now let's look at it with the position. So let's put this right here. And then let's mess with the size here. Just like that. Interesting. Rotation. And then position. So that's how it works with the position as an anchor as well. So if you want this anchor here to be very strong, you can use the advanced pen tool. So that's a little bit about how the advanced pen works. All right, so now we're gonna look at what the mesh actually is and like how it works. So the mesh here is basically what is being affected when you use the puppet tool. So if I zoom in, you will notice that we have all of these different triangles, and this is what is actually being affected. And when you create a new pen, notice that more triangles actually appear so that you can manipulate it better. I'm gonna delete these. Now we can go up here and we can look at the expansion. Now, what is the expansion? It's basically how big your mesh is going to be. So if I raise this up like this, notice that the mesh has grown drastically, and it's now covering all of him. And notice now too, if I try to move this pin here, his arm is actually moving with his head. That is because there's no separation in the mesh between his head and his hand here. Now, what would happen if we were actually to drag this down drastically, so like -15? We would notice that a cutout has been made. So the mesh has actually cut into the image. And now we are able to move the inside of our image. I'm gonna set that back to 0, and then I will zoom out a little bit. All right, so now I'm gonna zoom in a little bit right here actually. And now we're gonna look at the density. Now the density is basically how dense your mesh is with triangles. So here we have it at 12. This is the highest that it can go at. And I'm gonna click on my pen here, and then I'm gonna drag this down to 1. Notice what happens. Notice that our mesh has become a lot less dense with triangles. And if we move our mesh now, the movement has become a lot rougher. So the higher your density is, like up to 12, the smoother it's gonna be. So that's how the density works. All right, so now that we understand how the mesh works, I want to look at the Starch Pen. So I'm going to select it right here, and then I'm going to put one right on his arm here, like this. And I'm going to put an advanced pen right on his hand here as well, and then one down here as well. Notice if I zoom in a little bit, notice that the mesh around this area has become very dense, and this is because we have a starch pen that was added so close to it. So what is going to happen here is basically the starch pen is going to make this area a lot stiffer. And if I try to animate this hand here, notice that the Starch Pen holds the area that is very dense with triangles by the elbow very well. So think of your Starch Pens as really strong anchors that minimize the movement in certain areas. And it's been recommended that when you know what your animation is going to look like, you should put your Starch Pens in first and then your other types of pens in later. Also, another point, the Starch Pens need another pen for it to work, and it's going to be in between the area of the closest pen that the density of the triangles is going to be found very high. All right, so now we're going to look at the overlapping pen tool. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete this mesh, and I'm going to start a new one. So I'm going to grab the position pen tool, and I'm going to put one right here. I'm going to put one on his hand, and then I'm going to put an advanced pen tool on his around his neck right here. Now let's say we wanted to move his hand to the left. Notice that it goes in front of his head. This is because After Effects has taken our PNG image and decided that the hand is going to be in the front and the head is going to be in the back. But let's say we wanted to flip this. How could we do this? Well, we could use the overlap pen tool. And to see this really well, I'm going to create a background for this. And then I'll select this gray solid, press OK. I'll drag it to the bottom. Good. And then I will go down to my overlap pen tool. Click on my mesh. All right, so now I'm going to create the overlap. Now I'm going to select right here and notice that this white appears. Now with the white here, it basically means that you're in the positive and what is white is going to appear in the front. And you are also able to play with the extent of it. So if I drop this down, notice that it shrinks a little bit. I'll press Command Z to bring it back. You can also move where you want your pen to be, like this. I'll leave it right about here. All right, good. But let's say we wanted the hand to be in the back. How could we do this? Well, all we have to do is simply bring this down to the negative. And we would do this by dragging it down to negative 100, right around there, or negative 125. Now notice that it's all black. And this means that the hand is now going to move to the back. So to show this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to select my pen here. Now notice that the hand moves in the back. So that's how you can move certain parts of your images from the front to the back. Now let's look at this last option up here, which is record option. And to use this, you need to make sure that you have the position pen tool because it only works with this one. So we're going to click on this here. And basically how this works is that with the Puppet record options, you're going to place a pen and then you're going to press Control and then click on that pen. And it's going to record your movement once you move your pen. So I'm going to have it show the mesh and I'm going to press OK. All right, very good. Now I'm going to place a pen here and then I'm going to press Control. Notice that the stopwatch appears to indicate that we're about to use the record options. And then I'm going to move this pen. And notice too with this how the time indicator is moving as well. Press 0. Notice that his arm is now moving and that it was recorded. So that's how the record options works. So I hope you learned a lot in this tutorial about the Puppet tools and that you will give it a try. And we will see you in the next one. Until next time.